When UPI started, it started more as a person to person. It became merchant. Now you can go and even apply for a IPO or a ASBA through UPI or set up subscription. And now you can link even your credit cards, right? So I think that the whole experience and cross-border remittance and light and offline payment and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
So I think what it has done is it has just built the core infrastructure for businesses and financial institutions to innovate on top of it.
Branches. You don't need that. I mean, I don't know when was the last time you went to a branch. I keep on going there probably once in 3 months. Even I don't know how often I go there. But I still see crowds there. Okay, At least a part of Bombay where I stay, and there's still a lot of people that still use the branch. The branch is still relevant. What's going to happen there? I mean, do you think that we can reduce the crowds even further, or branches will always stay, or what do you think?
I think that's a great question, and this question keeps getting asked year on year. But today, for example, at Kotak, 98% of all our retail transactions are done digitally, but 2% is outside. Okay, but if absolute numbers, if you look at it, transactions are still growing, and that's the reason, like you answered, is there a question of are branches relevant? Branches are still relevant because what has happened is we have not added that many branches compared to our growth in customer base. So if I was serving probably 3,000 or 4,000 customers per branch, today my operating ratio between a branch to customer is about 15 to 20,000.
Wow.
So that means I can grow disproportionately my ability to serve customer without necessarily adding those many branches.
Deepak, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. An honor to have Kotak Mahindra Bank with us. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Thanks, Anupam. Thanks for inviting me over to be part of your podcast.
Fantastic. You've been you've been in Kotak for a very long period of time.
Yes, 15 odd years
15
now.
years.
So it's a long time.
And you're a career banker. You've done a lot of things in different places.
Absolutely. I mean, I was with Standard Chartered for 5 years before I started my inning at Kotak. But I also did a stint in telecom, so I can't say through and through a banker. But yes, 20 years of my life has been in banking now. So
amazing. We had Jaspal Brindra, I think a couple of weeks ago. He's now part of Centrum, I believe.
Yes.
And he was here on the show. But let's come to you, Deepak. You've headed, beyond banking also, you've headed a long list of digital products at Kotak, and very different kind of products which you don't expect to see usually from the banking sector, from 811 to Cherry. Walk us through the various things you did and the consumer learnings that you've had in general, because you've seen this evolve over a very long period of time. So let's start from there.
I think that's a great journey that I had at Kotak, because before we started on our digital journey way back in 2013, I was involved in building and running certain businesses in Kotak. I had set up our priority banking, which is what is called Privy League, and then our NRI banking and offshore business. So my journey into digital started more from business and consumer lens. So whenever I looked at digital, I was always asking about this one question: what problem are we solving for consumers, and how does it help us build our business? I think I was fortunate that in Kotak, when the journey of digital started, we still are nimble and we call ourselves as a mid-sized bank. So we don't have arrogance, or we don't have the bureaucracy of large banks, and digital for us became a way to find new avenues of growth. So we did a lot of stuff, some of them obviously the big ones like 811 or Cherry or our mobile app are the standout ones. But we also experimented with a lot of things which not necessarily became big. In fact, way back in 2013, we were globally the first bank to launch banking on Twitter.
Wow.
We had launched even a campaign called #banking. It was a very cool thing. But then we realized after that there were not too many users who were on Twitter doing financial service.
Yeah.
We were also the first one to launch a banking using social media, which is what we call Jiffy. We did something which is non-bank account-based payments much before UPI came in India, called KPay. So I think having done a lot of those experiments, one thing we realize is innovation is important, but I think getting scale out of what you do is even more important. And I think that's when we started to decide not to do a lot of things and not copy what others are doing in the market. And I think a lot of our at-scale innovation, like we were the first ones to do banking on WhatsApp, or probably launch a video-based KYC, or the whole Aadhaar-led account opening. I think many of those innovations helped us leapfrog and build digital at scale now at Kotak.
Yeah, I mean, what would be the few digital products that you're really proud of? I mean, to me, 811 comes across as one, although I don't know whether it's like fully digital because it's essentially a banking account. If you can just talk about some of the stuff that really stands out.
So I think Kotak continues to be one of the most successful banking app. We started that 10 years back, but we have about 5% of the banking market share through our app, even though our deposit share is about 2%. So digital for us was always a way to acquire and engage customers. But due to KYC restrictions, we could not do a full digital experience, as you rightly said. But then post-Demon, as the regulation changed, I think thanks to Aadhaar and India Stack, we could onboard customer in less than 3 minutes, and that's how 811 was born. And then I think the second wave of change happened during COVID, when regulators allowed the full video KYC as a substitute to your in-person field verification. And post that, actually you have a journey which is fully digital. You don't need to come in the physical world at all. Right from the time you install an app to set up your account and then start doing transaction. So today I can proudly say that our full experience is digital, unless you need a physical debit card or a checkbook. But that's not something you must need to bank. But yes, there are customers who still prefer that.
Yeah. So let's go through some of the most common products to see how digital has actually improved things. And when you think about that, when you say the word digital, there's just this UPI thing because it's been such a big success. I think we are in the 6th or 7th year of that. It started in 2016, if I remember, correctly. What's your take on how things stand today as far as the whole digital experience in banking is concerned, and what do you think lies ahead?
So as I look around both in India and see what we have achieved vis-a-vis the rest of the world, I think we have been in a very, very fortunate place, especially with the kind of development we have seen in the last 5-6 years. While I think UPI stands out because it's now the largest digital payment ecosystem anywhere in the world, but I think we must realize that it all started with Aadhaar. That was, I think, the first of our building blocks, the identity stack. We could do away with a lot of physical documents, wet signature, verification at source. Payment stack with UPI, of course, and then the Aadhaar-enabled payment system for last mile payment and subsidy. Bharat bill payment system, which aggregated a lot of billing that we do. And then again, I think a lot of other stack like a fast tag, which has transformed. Again, it's a bit of a payment for vehicles. Vehicles have their own identity. Or we are seeing now the data stack through account aggregator and open credit network. The GSTN piece, which again has allowed data to be leveraged for access to credit. So I would say everything that we are seeing as a part of our India stack today, it all has some linkage to financial service or bank. And banks like us are taking advantage of saying that if I can find access to data that is available digitally or identity or payment, how can we build a lot more on top of it? So when UPI started, it started more as a person-to-person. It became merchant. Now you can go and even apply for a IPO or a ASBA through UPI or set up subscription. And now you can link even your credit cards, right? So I think that the whole experience and cross-border remittance and light and offline payment and the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
So I think what it has done is it has just built the core infrastructure for businesses and financial institutions to innovate on top of it. And I think that's why I keep saying this is such an exciting place to be in because we can imagine and we can build a lot on top of this core infrastructure layer.
What's going to change with account aggregator that you think, with stuff that's going to be even better for the consumer than where we are today?
Oh, I think it's going to be transformational for the very simple reason that I keep saying this. India is one of the few countries which became data rich before citizens became financially rich. World over, I think the Western world always was financially rich and now they were getting data. One of the key challenges that we face in India is that a lot of people still don't have access to credit. Because of the traditional credit underwriting model, the risk and bureau scores, some of those became the starting point for you to get access to credit. But how do you get into the credit fold? And I think account aggregator helps every consumer to demonstrate the data of transaction, of their behavior, what they are doing. And that becomes one of the levers on which financial institutions can start underwriting. It also gives customer greater control of their own financial data, largely starting with financial, but hopefully the health data, a lot of your other data like taxation data. You can literally move your data where you want and find what is the best deal or offer or service you can get. And then this becomes the building block of the data privacy architecture, where you're saying that consumer is the owner of the data and every institution is the custodian of the data with fiduciary responsibility.
Branches. You don't need that. I mean, I don't know when was the last time you went to a branch. I keep on going there probably once in 3 months. Even I don't know how often I go there. But I still see crowds there. Okay,
Yes.
At least a part of Bombay where I stay, and there's still a lot of people that still use the branch. The branch is still relevant. What's going to happen there? I mean, do you think that we can reduce the crowds even further, or branches will always stay, or what do you think?
I think that's a great question, and this question keeps getting asked year on year. But today, for example, at Kotak, 98% of all our retail transactions are done digitally, but 2% is outside. Okay, but if absolute numbers, if you look at it, transactions are still growing, and that's the reason, like you answered, is there a question of are branches relevant? Branches are still relevant because what has happened is we have not added that many branches compared to our growth in customer base. So if I was serving probably 3,000 or 4,000 customer per branch, today my operating ratio between a branch to customer is about 15 to 20,000.
Wow.
So that means I can grow disproportionately my ability to serve customer without necessarily adding those many branches. But especially for current account customers, business customers, customers where still cash is in circulation and cash is needed, I think for them branches are still very, very important part of their banking infrastructure. Also customers who continue to choose a locker, or probably customers who are senior citizens, those who are not very, very comfortable to do a lot of things digitally, they choose to come and visit a branch. So the branch density may not grow, but I think branches will continue to stay and find its own relevance. But we'll end up acquiring and serving more and more customers digitally. That's also the reality.
I'm just thrilled that, for stuff like changing of ATM pin, you don't have to go to the ATM anymore. I believe that can be done by OTP now.
Yes. But why do you need to even go to a ATM? I would.
पुराने ज़माने में we needed that, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You would get a brand new, you would get a credit card which would be in a nice fancy package and everything, and you open it and then it says well, for this is your pin, but you now have to go to the ATM machine and change your pin. Okay.
Yes.
Or you could do it through I don't know what, but
now for everything you can come to a mobile app and you can do it. You don't need to go anywhere.
What about
else.
change of address? Please tell me that at least that is not.
No, change of address you can do it on mobile, provided your address is updated in Aadhaar.
Whatever. I mean, as long as I'm linked to Aadhaar, that can
as
be
long
done,
as
right?
it's linked to Aadhaar, you can do it.
That used to be painful. Going to the bank for change of address and then being asked, by the way, for rent agreement, this agreement, that agreement. Please, I hope that is now.
That's why I said the India stack has made the whole banking experience very seamless. So if you are updated on Aadhaar, if your PAN and Aadhaar is linked, if you're one of those customers who's digitally traceable, then I don't think you have any challenge across financial system.
Now, let's get to the slightly darker side, I would say, of digital, of this entire linking up stuff. That people will obviously abuse the system also with cyber frauds. And they've gone up to an extent where I believe the police authorities are into it. They have a separate wing. The RBI has become very vigilant, and yet every morning I will get that SMS in my inbox saying that your bank account is going to be frozen. Click, and people fall for it. Okay, I'm not blaming the people, but people are people. You can't, what is your message to our listeners out here? How can they be more careful, and something that they can probably tell their parents, their domestic help, because there are parts which are more vulnerable to this. You call it Jamtara, you call it whatever.
Yeah.
But we know one thing, scams won't stop. They're going to go on, and people will use a digital way. All of us, we know how smart Indians are. What's your message to our listeners on this?
No, you're absolutely right. It's like you keep saying that smoking is injurious to health and people smoke, or you say keep your house locked and you leave it open, or don't cross the railway track and still people cross the track. So I think there is no end to human stupidity. but despite, I think we keep making a lot of effort. I think RBI is spending a lot of effort. I think they're running dedicated campaigns with Amitabh Bachchan saying it. And, I think there is, to that extent, the awareness about what not to do is there. But it does happen that people fall prey to it because some of the fraudsters, the way they approach you, some of the smartest people I have seen falling prey to it.
Is it?
Because, and then they say, oh, how can I do this? This is not something. And then you're surprised that, how can somebody as learned and educated can fall fraud? And I've seen like somebody says, oh, your 5,000 reward points are just going to get expired, click it. Or you'll buy one meal and you'll get a second meal free. And people for one meal of $200, they go and just give all their details. So KYC is just one of those. But I think there are many ways in which people fall prey to this. The question, and I think the fraudsters have become far more sophisticated. For example, very recently, in last few days, I have come across some of the large banks, customers got defrauded, where they just send a link which opens up a web page and it copies everything that your phone has through a small component that gets induced on your phone. And parallelly, the fraudsters do a parallel transaction on another screen. So I think while we are all trying to make the whole app and digital experience more and more secure, we be it a second factor, third factor, device binding. But at the same time, it's like if somebody says, give me your OTP and CVV PIN, and you end up giving it. I mean, that's unfortunate, but that's the reality that a lot of customers do fall prey to it. So all I can say through the medium of your podcast is, you should be extremely, extremely careful. Your plastic and your phone is your money.
Yeah.
So, and I think just like the way you preserved your cash, I think these are now your digital assets, which has a financial, all your securities and data are lying on it. Treat it very, very carefully.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they just go and install malicious apps. A lot of apps today are reading your credentials. They ask you for permission to read all other apps on the phone. And people just go and give all the consents. A lot of gaming apps, just because you get a 10 rupee and 20 rupee of cashbacks and some points to redeem and play the game, they just give consents. Now, so fraud is not getting perpetrated only through some of these, the calls and the links that comes. But there are many ways. And I think they're just trying to hit consumers to say, I'll try in 10 different ways, you will fall for one.
Yeah. So, sorry, I want to just go through a laundry list out here. Okay, first of all, do bank accounts get frozen? As they say, frozen. कुछ होता है ऐसे चीज?
Yes, it does happen if you don't transact for a long period of time.
But you get warning for that.
Yeah, you do get, and nobody tells you to click on any link and do anything stupid. Rather, banks always keep telling you that never click on any link.
Yeah.
But despite that, people do click on links.
Okay, so first, folks, do not click on any random links. I think you should, if you have even 1% doubt, just contact your bank. Is that,
Absolutely.
That's good?
Absolutely.
Okay. Number two, I like that the RBI campaign talks about how UPI is made for payments, not receipts, right? Can you just talk a little bit about that, of how, we can be more careful when it comes to UPI? Because that seems to be a favorite mode of all these scammers.
Yeah, I think there are two or three things that is, while there is, again, NPCI has been running a lot of campaign along with banks. But one of the things is anyone who's sending you a collect pay request, I think that's something which, even though limits of those transactions have been reduced dramatically, but I think that's one thing one should be very wary of. Anyone who's sending you, and at times they create a handle which looks like it's a genuine one. Some of them choose to create a handle of very well-known people or good reputed institution, and you end up thinking, oh, this request has come from someone that is known. I think collect pay, I would say one should definitely avoid. Second is any payment that you are not personally involved in doing, one should be wary of. So either it's an in-person payment, I'm making at a store, great. I'm making at a merchant site, which is an online one. But if somebody says, okay, I'm just sending you a link and accept it and pay, the typical fraud in India that is happening in a big time is OLX frauds, for example. You list for a product on OLX and the first 20 buyers who will reach you are all fraudsters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they will all say, give you whatever price you have asked for.
Huh.
And they'll say, okay, I'm going to make you a payment online. and just to make you payment, I need certain detail of yours. And people get so excited that, oh, I'm getting the price of a product that I wanted to sell, that they don't even question that without negotiation, how somebody ready to buy for the price. And I think if you start, and this is where it's important for people who are coming into the payment fold, is to realize that look at credentials, authenticity, link, collect payment, request, all those things. I think it's extremely, extremely tricky otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand one thing. People say that India is supposedly a low trust society, but we seem to be trusting anything that comes to us that offers us some money, weird stuff. What is collect pay? I haven't, I'm sorry, I mean, I don't know what it is actually.
So collect pay is typically where I can request you for money.
Okay.
Or I can send you my QR code and ask you to just upload that QR code from your gallery and make a payment. So typically you pay me, but what if I ask you to return? So then I will send you a request for a collect pay.
Yeah. So folks, please be careful. I mean, your first hit on OLX gets you. That's funny. That's actually funny.
Yeah, I mean, you Google it out. You will know the kind of frauds that's happening there. So
there you go. Google it out. Who falls for that OLX?
And not just this. I mean, for example, I know frauds where somebody made a booking with the Blue Dart, or somebody wanted to return a product on an e-commerce site, or someone just called to redeem their reward points. And they will all send you a link to say, okay, just click on this, and then either we'll ship your product or we will pick up your product. And every time you do that, there is an underlying, either you're compromising on your credentials or you will end up authorizing a payment without knowing that actually you authorized a payment.
And there's a news headline every day, and all kinds of people, celebs and this, and all sections of society are stuck. So folks, please be careful when you're accepting any such links. Always reach out to your bank, and if it looks suspicious, feels suspicious, sounds suspicious, it probably is suspicious. So please be careful when you're doing any of these transactions online. Deepak, what's your view on credit cards and changing customer behavior out there? Because credit cards have become much more accessible now, as compared to say 20 years ago, when they were still a slightly more exclusive product meant for a certain class of people or income. What do you see out here? And here I'm talking in general, not just digital, but credit cards in general. A lot of people are getting it, some are using it, some are abusing it, etc., etc. What do you think?
So I think credit card is a form of a ready credit. I mean, while card is a form factor, but I would say credit is a need, and a lot of us use credit for convenience. A lot of us use it for rewards and cashbacks, or probably the other perks that comes with it, be it a lounge access or some of the premium offerings that, depending on the card you have, that you may get from your card issuer. So credit card has different purposes. While obviously a lot of people really use it for credit, that is revolver and paying on EMIs and use. But credit card does come with a high rate of interest. So to that extent, there are a set of people who just use credit card for the positives of convenience and rewards and other privileges and benefits coming out of it. But I think one of the interesting things we are seeing in credit card now is the form factor of credit is shifting. Because there are many ways in which you can avail credit. So earlier you got a card and then decided where you want to tap or transact on your credit as an instrument. But credit as an instrument is now available either through a buy now, pay later, or easy EMIs, or checkout financing through consumer durable finance and all that, right? So I think access to credit has widened, and that's precisely what you were just pointing to. And I think as more and more consumers get credit, and those who demonstrate good paying behavior and a good payment track record, I think they are also getting longer term credit or higher credit amount which is available to them. And that is also fueling the consumption economy. Because you walk into a retail store, say a Chroma or a Vijay Sales, and moment somebody says that, oh, instead of a 55-inch, why don't you take a 65-inch TV? Anyway, you have to pay it over 3 months, 3 or 6 EMI. You tend to upgrade. So I think one of the things we are seeing in India, like the Western world, is it is also fueling the consumption class, because you have access to credit, and thereby you can make those high value purchases or things that you would have deferred in the traditional case. And with now RuPay getting linked on the UPI, the credit card, I think we are going to see a further expansion of credit, even for a lot of small value transaction. Earlier, credit ticket size was slightly more higher value, and debit and cash was for small value transaction. But as it gets connected onto the credit railroad UPI, people will start making even all their small purchases which gets added to their credit account.
Yeah. So let's take a step back, and you spoke about how credit is actually a form factor. And let's talk about, credit cards are a form factor for credit in general. So let's talk about loans. Okay, here I'm talking only of retail loans. Very big segment for banks. How has that experience changed for customers over the past, and how do banks differentiate themselves on retail loans? It could be home loan, education loan, consumer finance, whatever. Is it really all about speed now? Because you keep on hearing this: get a loan in like 3 seconds, 10 seconds, etc. Or is it about something more?
No, I think you're right, but I would say not. So there are two type of loan I've seen. One is what is a considered purchase or a considered loan. There I have time and I want a best deal, and I'm ready to look around and see what works best. That typically applies especially when you're taking a home loan, because you don't buy home every day. Home is a considered purchase, and there is a certain behavior, and their time is not as important, because it's not that I saw a house and I want to buy it tomorrow, right? So there I think rate and the reputation of a brand that you are taking loan from, because mortgage is again a long-term commitment and relationship. So I think set of criteria that goes in play for some of those high-value long-term loan is very different. Personal loans are largely if people are looking at it the last minute, if there is a need for any crisis. And there, one is not necessarily as sensitive to rate, but the time that it takes for me to get the loan becomes extremely important criteria at times. So if somebody tells me that I'll get you 1% less, but I'll take 2 weeks more, I'm okay if somebody can give me right now. And I think that's why banks do a lot better job there, because banks understand and know their customers a lot better. A lot of customers are pre-approved for a loan. That means you can instantly click and the money can be in your account in few minutes. So I think there's constant battle between rate versus time. A lot of customers who have less time, they don't care for rate. And if you have a lot of time, you may still look at a rate. And then comes the last category of loan, which is typically the consumption-led loan. These are the loans which are normally offered at the point of purchase. So like we spoke about consumer durable finance or a vehicle finance. You go to a car dealer, and from car dealer you decide, okay, this is the car I want and this is the amount I can afford. Or probably you go to electronics or a retail store, and there you decide which is the best financing option for me. So I think depending on the product, depending on the point of purchase and the duration and the time sensitiveness, and whether these are considered purchase or consumption-led, the loan changes. So even though retail loan is seen as one, but within retail loan, again, there are 4 or 5 key tenets which drives the consumer behavior and thereby speed versus the rate.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I want to move to one product which, banks get a lot of grief for, okay, which is investments, because we know that a lot of people crib about how you enter into a bank और 10 लोग आप पे आ जाते हैं, ये ULIP, वो savings plan, ये policy, वो policy. I find that ironic because banks literally know your income and expense. If there's anybody who knows your patterns on both the sides of the balance sheet, they are banks. And yet when it comes to advice on investments and recommendations and mutual funds, there's all sorts of stuff that's happening out there. I'm talking about the sector as a whole.
Yeah.
I'm going by, I believe, even if you look at the nature of complaints that the ombudsman gets at the RBI, there's always this thing going on. What do you think can be changed out there? Can banks be trusted with giving me a product that's actually relevant to my needs?
No, I think great question, and that's the need of an hour. If not done, obviously customers will find other avenues of how they want to meet their goals. At Kotak, we took a bold call, just like what we did with 811 was more on serving the mass and millennial. we did something similar for investments, because we do realize that there is a need for us to offer something which is impartial, which is aligned to customers' interest, and something which is not linked only to your banking relationship with us. And that's why we built something which is very unique, and proud of having done that from one of the banks called Cherry. Cherry is a platform which is completely neutral and independent. You can buy a product of your choice all by yourself. Obviously, there are a set of recommendations, but it's not selling to you. You are deciding and you are buying it. So be it bonds, be it mutual fund, direct equity, SIP baskets, stock baskets, national pension scheme. So whatever you want to look from a long term, short term, medium term, it still does not offer you an insurance product, but it offers you all the investment products all at one place, and you can link any of your bank account, not necessarily only Kotak. So I think to that extent, it's also unbiased, that it's not trying to only go and offer this to customers who only bank with us. And somewhere I think something like this coming out from banks definitely brings in a very different positioning in the mind of consumer, that we are aligned with the interest of consumer and we are not just in the business of manufacturing and selling those products. And I think that's how the open financial ecosystems and our recommendation engine and all that works as we offer that. And Cherry is getting more deeply integrated with what we offer in the bank. So each customer then has a similar choice of building their mid-term or a long-term financial portfolios and goals, and see how they are achieving those.
How old is Cherry, and what are your plans?
We just started it about 6-8 months back, and Cherry as a standalone app is ready. Anyone can download and link their bank account and do that. And Cherry also is becoming part of our core banking app. So if you are a very investment heavy customer, then you will be able to experience everything that Cherry has to offer, which also includes your webcast and podcast with all the fund managers.
Sure.
It tells you a lot about a lot of content. So typically you'll also see a lot of banking interface or largely product selling led, not helping you decide.
Correct.
And I think we changed that whole positioning to say, how can you read and then you can find enough content, interact before you even take a decision of where to invest.
Sure. You spoke about how if banks don't give you investment advice, customers will try and find it somewhere else. And we've seen how in the last, I would say 6-7 years, the entire fintech startup space has boomed, and all across, basically investment, loan, spending, saving, everything. So are you working with that ecosystem? Because banks have typically been seen to say, okay, our focus is different. And these nimble and very aggressive startups in the fintech side have kind of made a reasonably large impact now for some of them to become very large consumer names also. How are you guys dealing with this, with the fintech ecosystem? Are you partnering with it, adapting with it, competing with it?
So we are creating our own fintech ecosystem. Cherry is a fintech funded by the bank in the bank. 811 is again a fintech which runs as a bank in the bank. Our whole idea is that create challenging business model within the bank to compete with the main bank. And I think we allow that to happen because that makes both part of it, the challenger and the incumbent, both raise their bar. So while we do collaborate with fintech, but I think wherever we feel we can build and compete and scale up ourselves, being, as I said, we are a nimble bank, we are young at heart, and we feel that a lot of these things we can build ourselves. It just needs that courage and confidence to say, we are not here to defend only what we have. But if consumer preferences are changing, if the market landscape is changing, then rather than aligning with those, go back and build it and offer it to our customer a better and a wider choice. And I think that's what we have been doing through all these initiatives.
Very interesting. So last question, Deepak, what's new at Kotak and what can we expect going forward? Any future plans, anything exciting to share with our customers, our listeners?
No, I'm great if every listener of yours also becomes a Kotak customer. So thanks for endorsing it unintentionally, I know. But yes, I think we'll continue to bring new channels and experiences for our customer. Our focus is largely to create new products and experiences through digital channel. As I mentioned, we continue to find avenues of growth more digitally at Kotak. So creating more and more platforms like what 811 and Cherry has done. In next few quarters, you can expect some more new products and platforms that will be out in the market. We are leveraging pretty much our mobile, WhatsApp, our web interfaces to redesign how the future of banking should be, which is more open, more participative, and gives customer a wider choice to decide how he or she would like to manage their financial relationship with us. And we'll continue to while support through the physical network and infrastructure, but you will see a lot more of that through digital.
Yeah, we look forward to that. Okay, Deepak, my last question to all our guests, standard. Anything that you're reading, watching, seeing, any recommendations for our listeners? Could be books, could be anything.
I love books.
Nice.
And I think that's something which... so one of the recent ones that I went back and read, and I think that's interesting, especially since it's a financial podcast, is The Psychology of Money.
Yeah.
I would strongly recommend if anyone is interested more about it. Obviously, there is a lot of other book which is for general reading. The World is Flat, Homo Sapiens.
Yeah.
I think the kind of books that gets you to think beyond what we all do at work. But yes, I think The Psychology of Money, I would say one should really get their hands on. Easy to read, you can finish it faster, maybe over a weekend.
Yeah. And folks, Morgan Housel, of course, was on a podcast back in 2019. And that is a wrap on this episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest, Deepak Sharma, President and Chief Digital Officer, Kotak Mahindra Bank. Deepak, thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
It was a pleasure being on your podcast.
IVM.